What you're about to see is a forensic audit of a system malfunction. We're not talking about code. We're talking about the system that governs public opinion. It's about the ever-widening gap between what people say and what they actually believe. To prove this isn't just theory, we're going straight to the evidence. A very specific data anomaly from the 2006 Chinese General Social Survey.
So, back in 2006, Shanghai's top party boss gets purged for corruption. It's a huge political shock. Now, common sense tells you public trust in the government should take a nosedive, right? Well, when researchers looked at the survey data from right before and right after the scandal, they found the complete opposite. Expressed support for the government didn't just stay the same, it actually went up. So, how on earth is that possible?
Okay, let's look at the numbers, because this is where you can see the system truly breaking. Expressed support, so what people were willing to say out loud on sensitive questions, jumped by a solid 0.35 standard deviations. That's a real, statistically significant increase. But at the exact same time, their actual support, which was measured through things like their general happiness and outlook, it just collapsed. It dropped by more than half a standard deviation. You're left with this massive divergence, a signal and a reality moving in totally opposite directions. Now listen, this isn't just some weird data quirk from halfway around the world. It's a blueprint for a system that is running everywhere right now. And you're the one paying the price for it. Because when that gap between the public lie and the private truth gets big enough, your ability to make good decisions about your job, your money, your life, it just degrades to nothing. You are trying to find your way through a world where the consensus you see is completely manufactured.
Here's a simple way to think about it. You're at a work dinner, and your boss says something you know is just a terrible idea. But do you speak up? Probably not. You nod along, because the cost of disagreeing, maybe a lost promotion, or just becoming the office pariah, is way higher than the benefit of being right. You're making a totally rational calculation. You're optimizing for your own survival. Well, that act has a name. It's called preference falsification. And it is the core mechanism that makes this entire engine run.
But here's the thing. This system doesn't run on everyone conforming in the same way. No, it's powered by a very specific group of people. The real engine room of conformity is the middle. Just look at this curve. The pressure to go along with the crowd is actually lowest at the top and the bottom. See, if you're high status, you're secure, you can afford to say what you think. If you're low status, you're already an outsider, you've got nothing to lose. But that middle group, they are trapped. They're paralyzed by status anxiety. They want to move up, but they are terrified of falling down. For them, the reputational risk of dissenting is just massive. And their conformity becomes the structural glue holding that public consensus together. So, the conformity of the middle keeps the system stable. But that raises a new, massive paradox. If a belief is actually held by just a tiny minority, how does it become the consensus that the middle feels so much pressure to conform to in the first place? Let's just imagine, for a second, that in reality, only 20% of the people in a network actually hold a certain belief. It's a genuinely rare opinion. But because of the pure mathematics of how networks are structured, that 20% can look like an 80% majority. This is called the majority illusion. It's a side effect of something known as the friendship paradox, which basically just means that, on average, your friends have more friends than you do. So if the most connected people in a network, the hubs, all adopt that minority view, their opinion gets blasted out and is overrepresented to everyone they know. The craziest part, no one has to lie. The network structure itself has manufactured a completely false consensus. Now, that illusion is just a natural property of networks. It just happens. But what happens when you introduce a new, invisible variable that is specifically designed to find that illusion and pour gasoline on it? Well, you get the algorithmic accelerator. The data from this audit is just brutal. Now, I initially thought, okay, maybe the algorithm is just a neutral mirror, right? It just shows you what's popular. But the evidence shows it's calibrated to amplify whatever gets the most engagement. And what engages us most is often conflict and anger. Compared to just a simple chronological timeline, the algorithm cranks up angry content by almost half a standard deviation. But here's the real kicker. Look at that last line. It actively suppresses what users say they actually want to see. See, the algorithm isn't being evil. It's just a ruthless optimizer doing its job. But the result is this highly engineered distortion of reality that pours fuel on that majority illusion.
So you have this massive engineered gap between what people say and what they think. And that creates enormous tension in the system. And just like any material that's put under that much stress, it has a mathematical breaking point.
And when it breaks, it doesn't happen slowly. It collapses in 3 very distinct phases. First, you get a trickle. A few people defect, but it's slow, it's linear, it stays contained in these small pockets. But then, it hits a critical mass. Suddenly, the risk of speaking out plummets and the cascade just explodes. It goes exponential. And then, finally, the pressure is gone. Millions of people all update their public signal at the exact same moment. The rate of change goes vertical. The entire system flips from one state to the other, instantly, like flicking a switch.
In complexity science, they have a name for this. It's called the consistency collapse threshold. It's the precise mathematical point where the system simply cannot handle the sheer volume of lies anymore. It becomes unsustainable and it fractures. So what do you do about all this? The hard truth is you have to learn to tell the signal apart from the noise. Noise is just cheap talk. It's public opinion polls, it's social media likes, corporate press releases. It's all low-cost, performative stuff designed to manage a reputation. The real signal, that only comes from costly actions. Actions where people have actual skin in the game. We're talking secret ballots, betting markets where people risk their own money on what they believe, migration patterns where people literally vote with their feet. That is the only data you can really trust. This entire logic leads us to a specific falsifiable prediction. Watch any proposed carbon tax. If the public support you see in the polls diverges from the anonymized odds in the prediction markets by more than 10 percentage points, that policy will be quietly delayed or killed after the election, no matter how popular it seemed to be.